All right, so this is actually live, so let's just have a little bit of prep on this. So you've met Christine before. You've seen her from the previous session we did. You got a little eye black on your eyes right there. So you know a little bit about who she is and what she does and all that sort of stuff. And
only a little bit. I'm really excited about this, actually.
Yeah, I am too. So
and I liked your conversation last night talking about her as well.
Yeah. Are you going to go into any of that, or is that something that we should just keep off the line?
It's up to you.
I'm fine with it. I don't want this to be staged or scripted.
Yeah,
I want this to be raw and conversational and not working from a question list and all that sort of stuff. Even though we're prepared to ask questions, I want to keep it unscripted. So she said she's on. Who's Adrian? How do I mute my sound? I don't know why these people are on. Hey, Marcia and Bill and Adrian. I'm not sure why you guys are on this conference yet, but this is a session private podcast. But I guess if you want to stay in and listen, I don't mind. Okay.
It's starting in 2 minutes.
You mute your sound. I can't hear you, so I don't really know. There's a button on your screen that says mute. So we're just waiting for Christine to join us anyhow. Thank you. Oh, perfect. Okay, fantastic. Welcome to the...
Never mind.
We didn't know who you were, so Christine invited you. Fantastic. Welcome. Yeah. This is supposed to be closed doors. We didn't know.
This is a safe place. It's okay.
Fantastic. Welcome. I hope all of you will join us on Monday for the Work From Home Virtual Summit. It's on our Instagram feed, which I'll type on the screen here in a second. But we've got some fantastic guests on, and that's on Instagram, and hopefully y'all can join us. All right, Christine, we're just waiting for you.
So how do you go in as the moderator to mute all of that?
They're already automatically muted. So I don't really know, but I think right now everyone's already muted. So if you kind of look up, you can see.
Okay, because it's only the people that are
correct.
Invited.
I'm only when Christine joins. Bear with us with our little banter here. This is a new process for us. We switched podcast tools recently, so I hate that I have to lean forward into the mic, because I kind of like to get comfortable and sit back sometimes.
You also stole my glasses.
We're waiting for our special guest.
Is there going to be like smoke and fire as she comes in?
There should be smoke and fire for us. You already know that.
Why are people jogging?
Oh, I thought I missed a call from you. I didn't see that. So we're obviously going to have to... Christine's in. Okay, cool. All right. There she is. I'm going to allow your webcam and microphone, Christine.
I like that picture of you, Christine.
All right, you there you go. Can I hear you?
So for your people can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So when I go in, I can see and hear you guys.
Yeah, we knew that.
And yeah, just so you know. Okay.
Yeah, we kept it really clean for the first few minutes. So
we
thanks
for not making out when I
we see that you invited some guests. We're like, wait a minute, who's joined our conference? It's out on the webs already.
I know. Well, I thought, there's like 5 or 6 people who just keep asking questions. I'm like, you know what? Go to this thing. Because from 7:30 this morning, people are already texting me asking stuff. So I'm like, here's a possible place to get answers. Go there.
Hey, blow us up. We're all good for it.
Yeah.
All right. So Marcy and Bill, I'm Deevo, and I run Fusion Photography and Sprout Connectors with this scallywag sitting to my right. And this is Lisa. She is my co-anchor for this. We started this podcast about 6 months ago, and we're excited that you're here to join us. So today on the podcast, we have Christine, and I know Christine personally from about 6 years ago. I met her through fortuitous circumstances, which we'll talk a little bit in a second. But she is a and correct me if I have this wrong, but you're a medical intuitive and energy healer. We're going to learn a little bit more about what that actually means, because not a lot of people actually probably know what that is.
Right.
But in essence, you are able to see people's energy, you're able to see people's auras and their soul spirits, their essence, and that sort of stuff, right? Is that kind of a good encapsulation?
Yeah, I can see their energy and sense things about them. And probably most importantly is I hear their spirit. And so I'm clairaudient as much as I'm clairvoyant. Clairvoyant meaning you see energy, clairaudient meaning you hear the spirit world. So that's actually a stronger skill for me. So I do both.
So if you want to find more information about her, sorry, was I interrupting you?
No.
If you want to find more information about her, you can find her on Instagram, which she's just about to get started on, and we're going to help her with that, right? That's Christine Lang 24, CH Christine, RISTINE Lang, LANG 24. And on Facebook, which you're kind of a bigger deal on Facebook, right? And that's Christine Lang, her name, comma, the medical intuitive, right?
Right. Or just, I think it's just medical intuitive. If you put my name in there, you'll see my picture.
Okay, fantastic. So welcome. I'm glad you decided to join us. We did a podcast with you, or our work from home virtual summit with you last week. You kind of shared a little bit of information about you, but it was so intriguing that we really kind of wanted to have you on here so you had your own private platform, if you will, not limited to 10 minutes, so you could tell a little bit more about what you do. I'm personally intrigued by it, having experienced your services firsthand. I know what they do, and as we've talked, whether you believe in it or not, which I still have some skepticism around the whole idea, but that's more my personal issues than the actual service itself. Christine, what she did for me is a cascade of ensuing awakenings, if I may say that led me down a path that I would never had been privy to had I not first met you. And that came in the way of books, knowledge. We spoke to my spirit for over an hour, which basically kicked me in the ass and told me I need to stop fucking around. And so thank you for that. And so I'm really excited. So I'm really excited to kind of dive in.
She doesn't candy coat it, is what you're saying. You can't ask for the highlights reel or anything. I just want to hear the good stuff. Lie to me if you have to. But we talked about this stuff. We were talking about you a lot last night, actually. But it was intriguing to me to find out like how that relationship, how you got connected, and then what it meant in your life, in the role of your life. We were talking about the fact, like, did it fast track you to where you are now? Was it just, eye-opening? Did it change the course of your life? Did it help you to find things, or did it just fast track you? And we kind of had a lot of discussion around that the information and the pivotal tools that you gave him were a changing point.
Yeah. So I'm going to let you actually talk in a second. So the answer to that question, if you're curious, it was all of the above. You fast tracked me, but more than anything else, you tuned me onto a channel frequency that I was unaware that existed. And the ensuing cascade of that basically just kind of unfolded from there. So that's I
think you said as well, I don't know, can I just use the language that you used? It stopped you from being such an asshole.
I would agree with that.
So here's my recollection of your session. And it was like 6 or 7 years ago. But my recollection of your session was that you came in, and because you were skeptical, and healthy skepticism is a good thing. I don't want anybody to lay that down. But because you came in very skeptical, you kind of sat there with your arms crossed and said, well, excuse my paraphrasing of you, but I already know everything. But if you want to tell me a little bit of something, I'll listen maybe. And your spirit basically said, you don't know anything, boy, right? And said it in a nice way, but just said, here are all the things that you think this is why your life isn't going well. Here are the reasons it's not. And it was very eye-opening for you, and that got your attention, and you said, okay, you're right, that those are the things I'm not doing. Those are the things I'm not really making connections between. And then once he had your attention, kind of helped you understand ways you could make changes in your life to give you more fulfillment, more personal satisfaction, and deepen your relationships. And so I think that's, in essence, what everyone's spirit wants to do for them, is help them have a more purpose-driven, fulfilling life, and help you get somewhere that makes you happy and fulfilled in a way that feels like it has resonance for you.
Yeah. So one of the things you left me with when I left your house that day, or your studio that day, was several books that were instrumental in my life. I read them to this day. Truthfully, they sit by my bed, and they have for 6 years.
Awesome.
I just opened them up. I opened them up on a
travel with them too.
It's funny. The first time, first time I met Lisa, and I was spending some real time with her, I opened up a suitcase, and I don't pack very heavy, right?
No,
maybe
it's all books.
And it was my books.
You.
All of your
and like a pair of pants and a shirt. That's it.
So your resonance is real, and I appreciate the time, and I appreciate because it's brought us back together 6 years later for whatever reason. And I don't believe in accidents, really.
I don't either.
I believe in serendipitous connections of life, and I think that we talked earlier before you came on, and you corrected me on the quote, but when the student is ready, the teacher or the messenger arrives, and that's basically been the story of my life the last 6 years, and it's because I'm finally tuned in to something other than my own selfish frequencies. So thank you. All right, so a little bit about what you do, and so I have 6 million questions, and we could probably turn this into multiple podcasts, but when you talk about seeing people's spirits and you talk about being audio and clairvoyant, what exactly does that mean? When you say you can see my aura, when you can hear my spirit, when you talk to my space, what exactly is that? Are you actually hearing a voice in your head, or is it a sound that comes to you? Tell me a little bit about that, because that part is just ridiculously intriguing to me.
Okay, so I'm gonna answer your question, but I'm gonna appear to not answer your question. So have you ever had that situation where somebody walks up behind you and you know who it is?
Yeah.
Okay, well, how does that happen? You can't see them. You can't hear who it is. They're not speaking. You feel that somebody.
I'm smell voyant. I can, if there's somebody I already know, I can smell them. No, truthfully, I can actually smell people, so I'm smell voyant.
But so.
It's true. I'm not joking.
Just push him out of the way. But so we've all had that experience of somebody walking up behind us and we know who it is, or our phone rings and we know who it is even before, the caller ID announces it or whatever. And that's because we are aware of somebody else's energy hitting our energy field. And when that pings, when that happens, we kind of expand our energy and our awareness out into our own energy field and feel, oh, who's here? Who's thinking of me? Who's near me? Who's calling me? And sometimes if the energy is familiar enough, that happens when we know who it is calling, or somebody walks up behind us and we know who it is. It happens with people we're close to. So we've sort of memorized their energy field. And so if you think of that, that's being intuitive, right? That's being perceptive. So if that's a dial and that's 1, all I'm doing is cranking it all the way up to 100, right? And so I'm feeling things about somebody's energy as soon as they get near me, as soon as I hear their voice, as soon as I see them. I can look at a photo of somebody and tell you 2 or 3 things about their personality. It's a good parlor trick for a first date. I use that on first date. Because people go, yeah, right. And I'm like, what about your phone? Show me one of your kids. And then I describe their kid and they're like, oh my God, that is my kid. So, and it's not like I'm going to go in depth. I don't ever violate somebody's privacy. I don't connect to their spirit without their permission. So I'm in session with somebody and they say, well, I want to ask a question about my sister. I've got to have the sister's permission before I connect to her spirit. But, I can just through observing somebody feel in a little more deeply than the average person does. So it's just taking that skill that we all have. I mean, when you go in the supermarket and you reach for an avocado and then you go, no, not that one, this one. Well, why? They both look the same. Why do you not want that one? You want this one. And it's because the one that you started to pick up and rejected fell on the floor. And as the grocer picked it up, he grumbled a little bit. So it's got some negative energy on it. And you're perceiving that the energy isn't as great about that one as the other one. You don't know why. It's not consciously done. Or you reach behind, you tilt the cereal box forward and take the one behind it. Why? Because we are getting these intuitive nudges all the time. We just weren't taught from the time we were kids to give it much credence. So we didn't tune into it. We didn't develop that skill set.
I am so interested in how you develop that skill set. You don't have to answer that right now, but just so I can get it on my brain right now. And when you decided to accept it, how long were you intuitively feeling these things or getting these messages and just like, oh, it's nothing or whatever. Like, I think sometimes it takes a long time for us to accept things.
Yes, I definitely rejected it for a while because I thought it was too airy-fairy. And I would say that one of my pet peeves are people that say, oh, from the time I was 3 years old, I knew I was special and I was so clairvoyant, because I feel like that excludes everybody. And I'm actually the opposite. I grew up Catholic, so I'm a recovering Catholic, and I so I grew up with all that
next podcast, recovering Catholicism.
So, but I grew up with that fear of God, that if I didn't get everything right, I'd be punished and all this sort of thing. So I sort of shied away. And by the time I got to law school, man, in law school, we were taught to worship power and money and nothing else. So by the time I graduated, I don't even know that I believed in God. And in my second year of law school, I developed allergies, and not asthma, but like runny nose, eyes streaming constantly. And it was before the days of Zyrtec and the stuff we have now that doesn't make you drowsy. So my options were take 2 Benadryl and drink Diet Coke all day long to stay awake in my law school classes, or walk around with a box of tissues. And both those options sucked. And I'm very much known for not being a rule follower, not accepting the answer I don't want to hear. So when I got out of law school, I just said, forget this. I'm figuring this out. And I started studying what was then called alternative medicine, and got really into, working with herbs and homeopathy and supplements. Made the connection between my stress and my allergies. When my stress was worse, my allergies were worse. So at that point in Charlotte, there wasn't even a yoga studio up near me, up in Lake Norman. And so I found somebody who taught Tai Chi down in Charlotte. I started doing Tai Chi and a little bit of yoga. And she was Taoist and got me into Taoism. And then I started studying Buddhism and developed a meditation practice. And she said, "You're seeing energy when you're doing Tai Chi." I'm like, "No, I'm not." So she said, "Yeah, I can tell by the way you're moving. You should learn Reiki, energy healing." So to humor her, I took this 1-day class and didn't really think much of it. And eventually started offering energy treatments to friends, like, "Oh, I'll put some energy in your back or in your leg if it's sore." And I'd say, "Well, first let me come home and take off my lawyer suit and sit and meditate just to change channels in my brain so I can focus." And when I would do that and meditate, I would just know things about my friends that I didn't have any way of knowing. They had an argument with their husband last night. They're contemplating, selling their car, just things that seem really random. And when I would share it with them, they'd be accurate. And it would then send that energy into a deeper realm for them. Like they would have really profound energy healings when I would get these pieces of information and share them. And after this happened 2 or 3 times, one of my friends said, "Who are you talking to?" And I said, "I don't know. Hold on." And I went back upstairs and sat in my meditation chair. And I said, "Who am I talking to?" And my spirit said, "Welcome home." And tears ran down my face. And she's like, "This is who you came here to be. Stop fighting it." And so I started sitting in meditation for 3 or 4 hours a day. And she would say, "This is the signal I'm going to give you when somebody has compromised lungs. I'll give you the smell of cigarette smoke. This is the signal I'm going to give you when somebody has blood pressure medication in your system. This is what it's going to look like when somebody's liver is congested." And I just started learning from her. So I'm self-taught in every sense of the word. And that was like 25 years ago. And so for the last 22 years, I've been seeing clients, and that's my practice.
My hair literally stood up on my arms.
Yeah.
It's like look at your arms.
That tends to happen. So a couple of things that first popped in as you were talking. I take a few notes here and there because I sometimes forget what I want to ask. But the idea of being able to feel people's energy and audio clairvoyant and visually clairvoyant. I imagine the scene from The Matrix when he was tapped into the Matrix and there's just a bombardment of people's voices and energy just coming in and being able to fine tune to kind of get to what he actually wanted out of that code, right? So
yeah.
Does that happen to you? Like, especially if you're in large public spaces, and I speaking from personal experience, I can only spend a few hours at a time around large masses of people.
And it's okay right now, though.
Yeah, and I never understood. I really never understood why until now the last 5 or 6 years I do, because it's about the energy that people emit. And if you're relatively intuitive, which I consider myself relatively intuitive, I absorb all of that, and I can feel people's, like when you're sad and that sort of stuff. And so I imagine for you, it's just an aggregation exaggerated times 1,000. And so how do you tune all that out so you can focus? And B, how do you police yourself from not stepping into people's privacy of their auras and their thoughts and all that sort of stuff?
A lot of questions. Okay, pause. So
I about being bombarded.
Yeah. So I would say that first of all, we're all energy, so everybody's feeling it to some degree. Why some people feel it more than others is not about better or worse people. I give the analogy of the density of things. So if there's a smoke-filled room and I take 3 items, a piece of steel, a piece of wood, and a piece of tissue paper, and I walk through that smoke-filled room, and then I get outside. When I get outside, the steel doesn't smell at all like smoke. The wood might smell a little bit like smoke, and the tissue paper is saturated with it. So some people are more like a piece of steel, some people are more like a piece of wood, and some people are like me, which is a piece of tissue paper. So when you are like tissue paper, whether you call yourself an empath or a highly sensitive person or somebody who wants to be an introvert, all those different things, I think have to do with finding a way to describe that sensation of being too porous for your own good at times. So yes, you learn to put up some filters. You learn to protect and guard your energy by not hanging out at, a Panthers game or, a pro sports game. But I can go do those things for a couple hours, but I sort of have to brace myself. I can't just go hang out in the mall for hours and hours. It's going to exhaust me. And so to some degree, I kind of put up a block. There are things you can do to energetically shield yourself a bit. You can use visualizations for that. But some stuff still gets through, and it is more tiring for the piece of tissue paper than the piece of steel. Absolutely. So to police myself, my spirit taught me early on as I was walking through the airport and hearing things about people I didn't want to know. Okay, that guy just lost his wife. That guy's having an affair. This woman's beating on her kids. I'm like, I don't want to know. I don't want to know. And my spirit said, you could put out that filter. You speak to the universe and say, I only want to know things about people that I'm intended to be involved in. If you intend for me to help this person, then give me information. But if not, don't talk to me. And that's why I pre-screen every client I take. A person wants to be a client of mine, they have to email me a recent photo, and a couple sentences about themselves. Because if I try to connect to their spirit and I can't, it means I'm not the best person to work with them. And that's the built-in protection mechanism I've set up, so I never waste somebody's time or money. So having that filtration system, that screening system set up, keeps me in my lane and out of everybody else's lane that I'm not supposed to be in.
So I want to make a distinction just for everyone who will be listening to this. You're not a fortune teller in terms of going down and sitting down and having your fortune read or your palm read or all of the different information that you can, because I've had that done before. And that may or may not be credible. I'm sure there are certainly people out there that can do that. There's also a lot of people who use it
There's a lot of people
negatively, right? Yeah.
Yes.
So you're not a fortune teller. You're somebody who taps into others people's energy and is able to interpret that energy in some sort of a dialogue. Is that a better way to say that?
And I would say people think of a psychic as somebody who kind of predicts your future, tells you what's going to happen in your future, versus an intuitive who tells you what's happening right now. And so when somebody comes in and sits in with a session for a session with me, I would say we focus on where they are right now and things from their past that have led to there. So if you're having trouble with a relationship now, there's a really good chance you've got kind of scarring, emotional scarring from old relationships or your childhood that's feeding into that. Your spirit's absolutely going to bring that up. So your spirit is kind of the best therapist for you. And I actually have a lot of clients who are therapists, and they say it's like 7 or 8 therapy sessions in one, because your spirit has been with you from day one and is giving all that insight of, oh, the reason you're pulling back right now in your romantic relationship is because she said this, and it triggered that memory from 3 relationships ago where that woman did this, this, and this. See how you made that link in your head. That might take many sessions with a therapist to kind of unwind if it gets revealed. So it's more about what is impacting your present moment and how can we make that better to set you up for a better future. But I'm not about predicting your future. I mean, sometimes I do work with people trying to get pregnant, and I pre-screen them. So if I take you, you're meant to get pregnant, right? And sometimes they'll say, like, you're not going to get pregnant for a year because you're meant to have this, and you're going to change jobs, and your husband's going to have this really amazing experience, and you got to be present for that, and then you're going to get pregnant. So that's future information, but it's explaining why you're not.
Let me pause you right there for a second. So when you say back to somebody, well, you're not going to get pregnant for a couple of years because you're meant to do this, this, and this. Is that their spirit telling you that, and you're translating it back to them? That's how that works. It's not you touching or feeling and seeing messages or aura around them. It's their soul, so to speak, talking to you, right? Okay.
Yes. And major things in our life I definitely believe that thoughts create, and you have an impact on what you put out, comes back to you, absolutely. But let's say that's roughly 50% of what happens to you on a daily basis, and the other 50%, especially the big things in life, are what we've scripted before we incarnated. So sometimes I will meet a woman and she's 5 minutes pregnant, and she'll say, "I bet you don't know the sex of the baby," because she does, right? She said, and I'll say, "Yeah, it's a girl because you had issues with your mom, and that's how you're going to work them out. That's in your script." So when I can tell the sex of a child, it's because it's relevant. You chose it beforehand, the birth order and everything, because of issues that you expected to have or have had since you got here. So things like that are, I don't want to say it's public record, but some people call that your Akashic record, your karmic plan, whatever you want to say. So somebody's spirit will sometimes tell me, well, this is what her, her child or first child is coming in. This is what he's waiting for her to then to go ahead and move to Virginia. And once that happens, that's where that child intends to be born, blah, blah, blah. So when I get future information, it's because it relates to the now.
Do you have, and tell me to stop asking questions. Do you have a moral do you feel a moral responsibility to somebody whose spirit you're converting and interpreting for? And let's say it's something that is horrible news, or it's not positive. Maybe there's an impending death or something like that. Are you able to feel that, see that? And do you have a moral responsibility to convey that, or do you censor yourself?
I almost never get that. So the only time I get bad news, so to speak, is when there's something that we can do to prevent it.
I love that.
So I have gotten information. If somebody says, "I'm going to go next month to see my dad because he's not doing well," I will hear, "You should go this week." That doesn't mean he's going to die this week, but it might mean this is when he's going to be the most coherent. So I will get information like that when it's being helpful. And I have said early on, please don't tell me bad news, because it puts me in this situation. Do I tell it? Do I not? And my spirit said, fine, we're not even going to play that. It doesn't serve a purpose. Unless it's to help someone, I don't get that sort of thing.
You have a question?
Yeah, I'm looking at your paper. You have so many lists of questions here, and now you've got another sheet filled with them.
I thought you said you wanted this to be 30 minutes.
You just said something that, you just said something. I could honestly talk about this stuff with you for hours, days. So I'm going to go back in time for a little bit. There's theories, which I firmly believe in, that as humans, as a race, we have forgotten how to communicate this way. We actually perhaps used to communicate telepathically using this sort of intuitive wisdom, right? And over the years of technology and industrialization and all the things that we have now, we teach our kids to repress that even now today, and we teach them to be students, not learners, right? And so you just talked about something that is, you're not necessarily given bad messages or doom and gloom, but you're given nods to go down a certain pathway. And so I'm going to go a little weird on this question here, but I'm going to bring it back. So religion, Christianity in of itself also teaches that God gives you free will and that sort of stuff. But at the same time, he gives you free will because he wants you to uncover this sort of truth by yourself, as opposed to just telling you this is how it's going to be. That was taken from something else, and that's another podcast. But nonetheless, do you think that our spirits guide us in that same way? Like a spirit, if we truly were in touch with our spirits, they wouldn't wake up and say, "Hey, dude, today you're going to get hit by a car." They'd be like, they would give us messages that would guide us down the best path and best version of ourselves, as opposed to giving us doom and gloom, because there's always two choices, right? There's always two choices, correct? Or maybe more.
Correct.
So do you see my question, or was that?
Let me just say this and let's see if it answers, because that was kind of a tie-dyed looking question.
Because I only have 5 minutes technically to get 126 more questions in.
We wrote 9 concepts in one question. Okay, so I think the best way to answer it is to say, hold on, let me just connect to your spirit for a second. That's going to be faster. Okay, your spirit says, the joy is in the leaving of the path and the coming back into alignment. That is the most concise way to say it. Sit with that for a second. The joy of your journey is in stepping away from off your path and then coming back into alignment. And you feel that resonance, and you feel the oneness, and you feel when you're interconnected to your spirit and God and the whole universe and all other people. And then you feel when you step away and separate out and become the lone island. Nobody gets me. I don't understand everybody. Screw everybody else. Whatever, I don't like my spirit anymore. He's a jerk. Whatever it is. And then we come back into alignment, and you give a big sigh, and you're back on the path. And for everyone, if you are Gandhi, if you are Martin Luther King Jr., if you're Buddha, if you are a priest or a rabbi, all of us have our moments where we don't have faith, myself included. And I'm like, this is too hard. What God has set up with this virus, with whatever, is too hard. And we step off the path, and then we come back. And so it's not, can we always have faith? Do we always have total understanding? It's, what does the stepping away look like? How far off do we get off our path before we notice we've gotten off the path? And then how do we get ourselves back? And all of our spiritual tools are about helping us get back when we step off. So I took this nice, concise thing your spirit said, and I added all my fluff to it. But does that make sense?
So with that answer, giving the divine spirit of who we are truly, would you say the meaning of life for us is what? Why are we here?
Quit asking the easy questions.
Yeah. That's a breeze. I would say we are here to experience, probably period is what we're here to experience, but we're here to experience being the highest version of ourselves that we can reach in this lifetime, and whatever that looks like.
What does Lisa's spirit say right now?
Oh my gosh.
Do you have a question, Lisa? You haven't even had to talk. I'm so sorry.
Give her permission. It's like that show on HBO a while ago where the vampires couldn't go into the house unless they were invited in. You remember this?
Yes, just like that. Yes.
With Reese Witherspoon. You have to invite her in.
Okay, it's a convoluted mess in here, though.
Do you have any questions, Lisa?
No, I don't have a question. Am I supposed to have?
I don't know. This is your life, not mine.
No, I'm in a place right now where, light has kind of, I don't want to say the religion I was and the situation I was, and the relationships that I've developed in the last 2 years that I wish I'd done it 30 years ago, but I'm in a good place where I'm learning and starting to understand things that I just didn't understand before. So I have questions every day, but
Ask one.
I don't have
one.
I feel like I can connect to your spirit. Hold on a sec. She says you have sadness that you feel like you were kind of sold a bill of goods the first part of your life in terms of what you were taught to believe, and that now you're having to kind of make up for lost time now that you're kind of on your path, so to speak. And she said, don't have sadness, because what you were taught originally was this foundation. It's like pushing off the edge of a pool when you're swimming. And it was the thing you're supposed to separate from. And there's more joy in that than if you were taught everything correctly from the beginning.
Amen.
Does that resonate for you? If it makes you teary-eyed, it does.
She's very stubborn, and sometimes she just needs to hear things.
Well,
okay, so we're on our 30 minutes.
Let me just say this: when you get emotional like that, that is your spirit kind of saying yes, yes, yes. That's how our spirits communicate through us, through emotion. Okay, sorry, Deevo, didn't mean to interrupt you.
We're at 30 minutes. Honestly, I could keep you for hours. Can I ask a question while you recover? So but before I actually ask my other question, I asked you something yesterday in private conversation. Our spirits are not a gender. Our spirits are a divine energy. They're not a male, a female. They're just they are what they are.
By the time you're interested in this kind of thing, you've had hundreds of lifetimes. So you've been both male and female. You've been every nationality. You've been the bank robber. You've been the guy that got robbed. You've been the prostitute. You've been the man that hired the prostitute. You've been the guy that beat his wife. You've been the wife that was beat. And that's why we know these things. Oh, I don't want to do that, because we've already done it. Not because we're so wonderful from the start. We've already had those experiences and learned from them, and they've left a soul imprint, and we don't need to repeat that.
Yeah, I believe in that. So this thing just keeps going on and on and on and on. We just keep coming back. And it is, I've heard some people suggest that this is a simulation, really, a self-imposed simulation for us to continue to grow and evolve and to step into a better version of ourselves each time. And at some point, we're at the point where we're like, okay, we've finally gotten to a point where we kind of feel comfortable. Now I can become a spirit, or I can become something better than human in a physical shell. Yeah. Is that a fair way to say that?
I think we have learnings when we're in spirit world, and then we decide to incarnate to kind of practice or play with those learnings. And if you want to practice being loving, you've got to go to a place where there's not a lot of people who aren't very loving. If you want to practice forgiveness, you've got to go to a place where people need forgiving. I think in the spirit world, it's pretty easy. And down here, it's not. And we come down here to kind of play with our new skill sets.
So we're at a weird crossroads. That I was going somewhere with that questioning. We're at a weird crossroads right now on this planet. Theoretically, according to ice records, the planet goes through a regeneration every some 100,000 years. I forget the exact cycle. It has something to do with lunar cycles and alignment of planets. And I'm not a metaphysicist, so I can't speak to it very well. But I do understand basically that the planet basically recycles itself every 25,000 years, I think, or something of that nature. Okay. That being said, there is a lot of insanity going on the planet right now. I personally believe the yin and the yang of that the insanity is an awakening for other people who are tired of living the same old monotonous matrix dream to wake up to something bigger and better. Do you feel that way? And is coronavirus part of that?
I do feel like the yin and the yang is always present, and we're always given contrast, and we're always given choice. So it gives us things to make choices from. The more contrast you have, the more all the choices are laid in front of you. And I think that there are always younger souls on the planet and older souls at any given point. And I think they drive each other crazy. If you picture this as the equivalent of grade school, and you've got kindergarten through 12th grade, and the people who are on the bottom end of, the elementary school have only had a couple of lifetimes, and they're here learning really physical level lessons, like don't smack the kid next to you because you want his toy. We have lots of people learning those lessons, right? They elected Trump, right? They said, ooh, if we hire a bully to protect us on the playground, then we'll be safer, and then didn't account for the fact that the bully might not like them so much. So there's, and then there's older souls who, are the equivalent of high schoolers. And of course, the elementary school kids drive them crazy. They don't want to hang out with them at recess, right? So all that contrast is built in. And it's why you have different interpretations of religion and different interpretations of being a good person and all that sort of thing. And I think at almost any point in time, people will say, oh my gosh, it's so crazy right now. Whether it was right before the Vietnam War, whether it was in the 70s, whether it was the 40s, there's never been a point that I can think of that people didn't say, oh my God, we're at such a pinnacle point in our evolution as a planet. I'm like, are we? Because I feel like we keep coming back here, right? So whether it's every 25,000 years or every 25 days, I kind of think the same thing applies. Coronavirus right now, I do think is a study in fear. I think most people have very little awareness of when they have negative thoughts and fearful thoughts, whether it's frustration, irritation, judgment, or fear and anxiety. I think the average person 6 months ago would say, yeah, I know when I'm thinking that way. And the universe said, oh yeah, let's see, pop quiz, right? Through this virus at us, and everybody's losing their mind. Because I think we didn't really manage our fear and manage our anxiety. I think what we did was distract ourselves, whether it was social media or alcohol or shopping or television or whatever we would do to distract ourselves. Distraction isn't the same thing as changing those thoughts. Well, now we're sitting at home by ourselves. You have to recognize all the things you've taken for granted, like being able to interact with people at work and your friends. And you have to sit within this kind of swill of negative thoughts because there's so much fear around us right now. I keep saying to my clients, your part-time job right now is to manage your emotional well-being. Manage your thoughts, manage your fears, notice where you are, clear your house energetically, open the windows, use scent, use sound. I've got nature sounds going most of the time in the background, classical music, 60s music, things that feel happy, to try to change the energy because it feels so heavy right now. And I'm making sure I meditate every day, several times a day, just to stay plugged into a more positive viewpoint.
You should join us on every night. I think I mentioned this to you last week, and I'll get to the end of this podcast so you can go about your way. But every night we started, Lisa and I started about 2 weeks now. We're into it.
I think so.
A week and a half. We call it the Silent Minute. We borrowed it from the British Empire during World War II, where every night at 9 p.m. they would collectively gather across the country, millions of people, for a moment of silence. So we have been doing that for about a week and a half, every night at 9 p.m. on Instagram. You should join us, and maybe you could host us in one of your meditations. Right now, Candace Blair, I'm going to give her a shout out. She is our yogi that has been taking us through gong ceremonies. Tonight, she's going to be doing a gong and flute ceremony for a few minutes at 9 p.m. on my Instagram live channel. Maybe you could come on next week and host a couple of those.
Okay, yeah, still chat about it. I got to figure out Instagram first, so I even know how to do this. But
yeah, you can't say no on live podcasts. Marcy, Bill, and Adrian are listening. They're witnesses.
Oh, yeah? Watch me. No,
You gotta show up. That's what it's all about now.
I love that word "swill" of negative.
I was thinking that
Go ahead.
too. She's just there's so many delicious words that you said that make it so visual when you're saying that swill of energy and negativity and what's going on in the world. Like it just makes it so visual. Sorry.
Yeah, no, never sorry.
There's certain words that we just love.
I love how you said though, but there's a swill of negativity, encircling all of us right now, and we need to manage our own house. And I think that's really, if I can offer my soapbox for a second, I don't disagree that coronavirus is out there and doing what it's doing. It exists. Clearly, people are dying, people are getting sick. I understand that. However, there are different, better ways to manage this, as opposed to just all mass reacting and jumping down to the grocery store and quarantining ourselves and all those different things. There are other ways to handle this. And I love the fact that you just said manage your own house. And that for me is probably the best possible anecdotal piece of advice I could give anyone is just manage your house, because you can give into hysteria. You can give into bullshit. You can jump into the crowd and do all the mass actions that are coming from all this, or you could manage your own house. And so that's fantastic.
And there's incredible people out there doing some really exceptional things under the circumstances that are positive, that are giving back to the community, all of that. So,
yeah. And so we didn't even get to half of the stuff we wanted to ask you. So that means that you have to come back on again. But if you could leave anyone, and this will be because we're now using a much more improved system, we're trying to get this out tomorrow to you, your fans, our fans, that sort of stuff. Okay. If you could leave anybody, and this doesn't mean Corona advice, if you had, these were your last words you could leave this planet before they ascend you to wherever they're going to ascend you to, whatever life you're about to do next, what would you tell us?
Oh, wow. Okay. I think I would say follow the love. Like, follow what makes you feel loving. When my kids were younger, they said, well, Mom, if you're Buddhist, do we have to be Buddhist? And I said, no, I really don't care if what you believe, as long as it passes these 3 litmus tests. Does it make you strive to be a better person? Does it make you feel empowered? And does it give you hope? And if it passes all 3 of those, I don't care if you worship a mushroom, because you're going to be more loving and you're going to find love. And so that's what I would say. Follow the feeling of love.
I like that. Okay, so since you invited 2 people on, Marcy and Bill, do you have any questions that you would like to ask Christine? You get 1 question, and you have 3 seconds to type it in. 1, 2, 9. Peck. All right, so yes, Marcy and Bill, we do podcasts every week. And if you follow us on Instagram, Fusion Photog, which is up above, you'll be able to see that. We try to get I'm answering some questions from the fans, 2 of them. So we try to publish this in 24 to 48 hours, and then we release it across our social media channels. So if you just follow Lisa Staff Photo on Instagram, Lisa Staff, STAFF, and then I'm right there, Fusion Photog, and then Christine, of course. So
do you want to do a shout out for Christine's handles too?
Yeah, again, fantastic.
Send them to my website, because my website is actually the easiest way to get a hold of me, just individually, which is christinelang.org, O-R-G. And you can there's a connect there form. You can connect with me that way. And that's the fastest way to connect to me, because I check my email throughout every day.
Fantastic.
Also, really my website, there's a lot of free guided meditations, little mini classes, all kinds of stuff if you just want to learn more and get your feet wet with, no commitment, and I don't even have to know you're on the website, right? You can check that out and see all that kind of stuff.
Oh, she'll know.
I'll know, but yeah. But I'll pretend I don't. Yeah.
Yeah, remember, she polices it. Thank you. I really appreciate your time. It was fantastic.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. Have a fantastic day. And thank you, Marcy and Bill. And I think there was Adrian. Was that on?
Adrian's on, yeah. So great.
Okay.
All right. Take care. Bye.
That was fantastic.